When the Pittsburgh Steelers inked a deal with four-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers, the move instantly became the center of national attention, and not all of it flattering. Rodgers, now 41 years old, is no stranger to polarizing headlines. Once the king of Lambeau, now a battle-worn veteran with a complicated legacy, he's either seen as a future Hall of Famer chasing one final shot at glory, or a fading star desperately holding on to relevance. And when the Steelers brought him into their locker room, they didn't just sign a quarterback, they signed controversy. Cue the noise. Cue the critics. Cue the trolls. And leading the chorus of negativity, as expected, was none other than Skip Bayless, the disgraced former TV personality whose career has nosedived into oblivion. In a bitter rant posted to social media, Bayless, who at 72 years old is now unemployed and facing a storm of legal trouble over a salacious $1.5 million scandal involving a former FS1 colleague, unloaded on Rodgers with all the bitterness of a man no longer welcome on airwaves. Aaron Rodgers is a diva. Washed. Done. Bayless barked into his iPhone camera, delivering a sad echo of his former on-screen persona. Then, like a man desperate for clicks, he dropped a cringeworthy pun, suggesting Rodgers would steal from the Steelers. But Bayless wasn't finished. In his most dramatic and delusional take yet, he claimed, Aaron Rodgers makes the Steelers one of the worst, if not the worst team in the NFL. Let that sink in. Bayless, once a voice in sports media, is now nothing more than a background hum, desperately trying to stay relevant with outlandish hot takes. And yet, his absurd claim rippled across social media, igniting debate among fans and analysts alike. Let's break this down with actual football logic. In 2023, Rodgers' season was cut tragically short, just 4 snaps into his New York Jets debut. The Achilles tear was supposed to end the story, but Rodgers, ever the enigma, made a stunning return in 2024, playing all 17 games and throwing for 3,897 yards with 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Not vintage Rodgers, but far from washed. Sure, the Jets limped to a 5-12 finish, but that collapse was hardly just on Rodgers. The offensive line was a disaster. The coaching staff was scrambling, and the locker room lacked identity. Rodgers was far from perfect. But labeling him the reason the team failed is intellectually lazy. Now shift the focus to Pittsburgh, a franchise that breathes stability under head coach Mike Tomlin. Tomlin hasn't posted a single losing season in his entire 17-year career. The Steelers finished 10-7 in 2024, punched their ticket to the playoffs, and now, with Rodgers under center, they've added experience and a chip on their shoulder. This isn't a team collapsing, it's one looking to reload. The idea that adding Rodgers somehow makes Pittsburgh worse is nonsense. The Steelers' biggest issue last season was quarterback play. Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph offered inconsistency, flashes of potential, but lacked the firepower to compete with the AFC's elite. Enter Rodgers. Even if he's no longer the 2011 or 2020 MVP version of himself, Rodgers brings leadership, experience, and a brain wired for late-game heroics. And in an AFC North division where every inch matters, a savvy vet might be the difference between a wild card and a Super Bowl push. And while Skip Bayless yells into his phone, the Steelers are locking in. Rodgers, as always, remains unbothered by outside noise, focused instead on building chemistry with George Pickens, Najee Harris, and that young, bruising Pittsburgh defense. The circus might swirl around Rodgers, but he's been here before. Media distractions, controversies, doubters, it's all old news. The man knows how to play the villain when he has to. And make no mistake, he'll weaponize that criticism as fuel. Meanwhile, Bayless continues to spiral, lashing out like a man watching his platform shrink by the day. His latest rant says less about Rodgers and more about Skip himself, a once relevant figure now drifting into obscurity. At this point, calling the Steelers the worst team in the NFL after adding a future Hall of Famer reeks of desperation. Bayless isn't analyzing football. He's auditioning for attention. Let's be clear. The Steelers aren't perfect. Rodgers isn't flawless. But writing off this team as a disaster in waiting is as ridiculous as handing Bayless a primetime mic again. So while Skip clings to relevancy with bitter rants and bizarre jabs, Rodgers is lacing up for one final chapter. Whether it ends in triumph or heartbreak, it won't be written by trolls.